In El Salvador, human rights organizations question the militarization of the country less than 48 hours before voting begins, claiming that it is an intimidating measure and a means of social control. The World Health Organization highlighted that genocide carried out by the Israeli government against the Palestinian population in Gaza Strip has killed, wounded, and disappeared more than 100,000 Palestinians in Gaza. And in Kenya, a strong gas explosion in the capital so far has left 2 people dead and more than 270 injured. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from TeleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In El Salvador, human rights organizations question the militarization of the country less than 48 hours before voting begins. They claim that this is an intimidating measure and a means of social control. Organizations such as TeleSUR have denounced that the heavy military deployment is a strategy of the government of the president and candidate for re-election, Nayib Bukele, as a method to intimidate Salvadoran society in the run-up to the elections. Gabriela Santos from the Human Rights Institute of the Central American University stated that in a country coming from an armed conflict, the deployment of troops is of great concern and reminds that the military should not fulfill public security functions. Police workers also share similar concerns.
The message is sent that the country can only have security if it is militarized, and that is not correct. A country that has security is when the legal norms are respected. In other countries, there is not an exaggerated amount of police or soldiers because the legal framework works. That is to say, the laws work, and here it does not seem that things should work if the population is kept under a repressive scheme. And the gang must be controlled. They must be taken out of the equation, but not replaced with authoritarianism, which is what we are seeing.
The Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ralph Gonsalves, congratulated the Venezuelan people and President Nicolás Maduro on the occasion of the 25th anniversary of the assumption of President Hugo Chavez. Likewise, the official highlighted the birth of the Bolivarian Revolution and the achievements obtained during Chavez's mandate.
The government and people of this blessed land salute the government and people of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela on the 25th anniversary of the induction of President Hugo Chavez, the eternal commander, into the presidency after his electoral triumph a few months before.
Likewise, the Prime Minister highlighted the birth of the Bolivarian Revolution and the achievements obtained during Chavez's mandate.
We celebrate the life and work of Hugo Chavez, but it is not only our comrade Hugo that we celebrate. All the people in Venezuela, all the Bolivarians, all throughout Latin America and the Caribbean, we have to thank for this immense opening, an opening which has been continued by President Maduro and the Bolivarians in Venezuela, in Latin America, and in the Caribbean. I'm looking forward very much on March the 1st to host President Nicolás Maduro and the rest of CELAC, 33 member state of this important regional body, which Hugo Chavez was instrumental with others in establishing.
After a marathon session, the vote in the Argentine Congress to approve the omnibus bill is postponed once again. The debate will be resumed on Friday at 10 a.m. local time. After midnight, the Chamber of Deputies decided to take a new recess. In a day marked by police brutality and pressure from the governors, the president of the lower house, Martin Menem, announced the new recess with the support of the so-called dialogue blocs. According to Argentine analyst Javier Milei's allies are the ones delaying the approval of the law. The opposition reaffirmed its repudiation of the law and the police brutality against the demonstrators outside the parliament.
Today we are here dealing with a law that challenges all. I believe that the government made a mistake in not separating what is urgent from what is important, and from what is indispensable. With pleasure, I will go. This session could have been less chaotic if we kept separating again the important issues from the urgent ones. Some things are urgent and, for example, some of the mistakes that were made are related to the productive sector, something that was not good for Santa Fe, Córdoba, or Central Region. I don't know who advised the president in wanting to raise the import duties on industry because he had promised to lower taxes.
In Argentina, police fired rubber bullets at demonstrators protesting against the far-right president's law outside the Argentine Congress on Thursday on the second day of debates on Javier Milei's reform package. Television images showed police firing rubber bullets to clear hundreds of demonstrators from the streets. Security forces also controlled the crowd with hydrant tanks in the context of the government's anti-road blocking protocol. According opposition deputies left the Argentine Congress on the second day of debates on Javier Milei's omnibus law due to the police brutality taking place outside the venue. The delegated powers demanded by Milei dominated Thursday's debate on the government's more than 300 economic and political reforms. During his speech, the deputy Cristian Castillo of the Left Front responded to the pro-government and pro-government deputies who congratulated the police action, offering details of the degree of violence exercised by the police forces and the disregard for international norms on the progressive use of force.
Dr. Martes Salvador, who is an advisor to Deputy Vilca, was shot with a rubber bullet in the eye and is about to lose his eye. Let us hope that this does not happen, and this because it was said that the security forces acted well and that there was not excess, and all the international recommendations indicate that they should not shoot in the face of the people, and they passed by on the motorcycles and shot in the face of the people. Dr. Alfieri was revealing the wonder of rubber bullets that were in the square, and they passed by shortly seated by Minister Bullrich, shooting left and right, and they give him a shot in the eye that he's about to lose.
Representative Castillo also read the list of the press workers injured by the police action.
I am going to read you, Mr. Journalist, the list of journalists by the rubber bullets during the press conference. Excuse me, but the press workers deserve that we do this in defense of their work. Vito Carrerita, graphic reporter for Telem, rubber bullet in the cuff. Alfredo Lua, graphic reporter for Telem, rubber bullet in the thigh. Lorena Tapia, journalist from TV Publica, rubber bullet in the thigh. Ignacio Pechunik, photographer from Vito Financiero, rubber bullet in the back. Bernardino Avila, graphic reporter from Pagina 12, rubber bullet in the calf. Hernando Serra, columnist from C5N, 4 rubber bullets. Nicolas Ramos, graphic reporter from Henry, rubber bullet in the leg. Susie Mareca, photojournalist, 3 rubber bullets impacts. Rodrigo Ruiz, photojournalist from C5N3, rubber bullet impacts. Rodrigo Ruiz, graphic reporter from Citrico, left leg injury. Celeste Alonso, freelance graphic reporter, rubber bullet. Santiago Loide, Telem, also rubber bullet. Diana Quiroz Celsia, rubber bullet. Lucky Perez TeleSUR, rubber bullet. Bruno Kench, cameraman of Channel 9, rubber bullet. Agustin Maica, graphic reporter from Telem, he inhaled a lot of gas. Martin Vega, 2 rubber bullets in the arm and a leg. Juan Santiago Valero, photojournalist from my magazine, rubber bullet in the arm. Lucas Zunino, from Powerful Throat Networks, neck burned with pepper spray. Sol Nazar, several rubber bullets in the leg. Cresta Pepe, photographer of La Izquierda Journal, rubber bullet in the face.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. All the stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. On Friday, the World Health Organization highlighted that the genocide carried out by the Israeli government against the Palestinian population in Gaza Strip has killed, wounded, and disappeared more than 100,000 Palestinians in Gaza. According to the report of the highest World Health Organization, the number of Palestinians killed exceeded 27,000 dead, and the number of wounded could soon reach 67,000 victims in the next few hours. In this sense, the World Health Organization added that there is certainty that the missing could be Palestinians dead under the rubble left by the innumerable bombardments of the occupier. On the other hand, the World Health Organization stressed that the risk of famine is high and the situation will worsen after Israel and the G7 countries decided to declare war on the humanitarian workers of the United Nations Agency for Palestine and to withdraw aid funds. On Thursday, the genocidal operation carried out by Israel in Gaza has been catalogued by experts of the United Nations Organization as the most lethal armed conflict for press workers in modern history. In this regard, the United Nations report reveals that more than 100 journalists and media workers have been killed so far. The report thus asserts that the killing of journalists is a deliberate strategy of the Israeli occupation forces to silence the truth and especially critical reporting. They also denounce that Israel does not allow the entry of foreign media unless they allow themselves to be accompanied by its military forces. In this sense, the spokesman of the Secretary General, Stefan Dujarric, assured that more than 150 journalists have been killed since October 7th. The Palestinian Ministry of Health warned that the number of people killed by Israel has exceeded 27,000 since October 7th. The government institution pointed out that most of the victims are children and women. It also indicated that more than 66,000 people have been wounded, while at least 7,000 citizens are still under the rubble. In the last 24 hours, the crimes committed by Tel Aviv regime in Palestine have left 118 dead and 190 injured. The authorities denounced that the occupation forces do not allow the entry of ambulances and Palestinian civil defense to the affected areas. The Palestinian Red Crescent Society denounced the continuous attacks and siege by the Israeli occupation army against Al-Amal Hospital in Khan Yunis for the 11th consecutive day. The society denounced that the Israeli forces continued their military incursions into the hospital and the Red Crescent facilities amid direct gunfire threatening the lives of staff and displaced citizens seeking refuge in the vicinity of the health center. They also reported that the Israeli military tanks surrounded the hospital from all directions, preventing the passage of ambulance teams into or out of the hospital facilities. In this regard, they warned that the hospital is suffering from a severe shortage of infant formula, food, and critical shortage of medical supplies and fuel. In Israel, 9 petitioners filed a lawsuit on Thursday with the Supreme Court asking it to declare Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu unfit for office. The petitioners, including former Israel Defense Forces chiefs Moshe Ya'alon and Dan Halutz, believe that Netanyahu, who faces criminal charges, is in an obvious conflict of interest. The Haaretz Daily indicates that the petitioners allege that the Prime Minister's actions are motivated by personal interest rather than those of the country, the public, or the welfare of the hostages and their families. In November last year, the Public Prosecutor's Office in Istanbul, Turkey, received a petition accusing Netanyahu of committing war crimes, genocide, and crimes against humanity in the Gaza Strip. Similarly, on December 29th, South Africa filed a request to initiate proceedings against Israel before the International Court of Justice in The Hague regarding its acts of genocidal nature committed in the Gaza Strip and to seek an urgent suspension of the Israeli military campaign. "28 non-governmental organizations have expressed their deep concern and outrage about the suspension of funding for the United Nations Relief and Work Agency, UNRWA, by some of its largest donors. The declaration was made through a joint statement where its signatories reiterated that the suspension would impact life-saving assistance for over 2 million civilians, over half of whom are children, who rely on UNRWA aid in Gaza. The note says the donors' decision comes amid a rapidly worsening humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza and after the International Court of Justice ordered immediate and effective action to ensure the provision of humanitarian assistance to civilians in the occupied Palestinian region. The statement also reminded that 152 UNRWA staff have already been killed and 145 UNRWA facilities damaged by Israeli bombardments. The Syrian army's anti-aircraft defense systems have repelled on Friday a new aggression by the Israeli occupant. The Zionist government fighters launched from the occupied Golan several projectiles. Most of them were intercepted and others hit areas in the town of Sayeda Sanaib, which is about 10 kilometers from Damascus, the capital. The Syrian forces have confirmed the attack but have not yet made any mention of the fatalities or injuries. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has repeatedly requested the United Nations Security Council to fulfill its responsibilities and put an end to these aggressions. The government has repeatedly requested the United Nations Security Council to fulfill its responsibilities and put an end to the siege. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news, coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with TeleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back. We go now to the east of the African country in Nairobi, the capital of Kenya, where a strong gas explosion so far has left 2 people dead and more than 270 injured. According to Isaac Maiwara, government spokesman, a truck loaded with gas exploded near a residential area. The Red Cross confirmed the 2 deaths and registered 271 injured, among them 25 children. All the injured were transferred to various hospitals, noting that 7 of them are severely affected. According to the government spokesman, the truck was loading gas when the explosion occurred and minutes later generated a huge fire. Burkina Faso's Prime Minister Apollinaire Joachim Kielem de Tambela justified on Thursday his country's decision announced last week to leave the Community of West African States, ECOWAS. The Prime Minister said the decision taken by Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger on January 28th had been carefully considered and came after a thorough analysis of the institution and the possible consequences of the withdrawal. Authorities in those countries believe ECOWAS no longer meets the aspirations of the Sahelian peoples, rendering the alliance of the Sahel states necessary. On the other hand, Burkina Faso's premier also condemned ECOWAS sanctions against his country, while Mali and Niger accused the bloc of failure to assist its member states. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, appeals for peace during his visit of Port Sudan. Sudan's 9-month-old war has so far largely spared the country's east, but with the front line inching ever closer and reports of military training camps across the border in Eritrea, the fragile peace there is in danger.
Sudan finds itself in a critical situation right now, with the war raging in many parts of the country and causing enormous suffering to its people. 1.5 million Sudanese have already left the country as refugees themselves. I conveyed through the governor, through the minister, and I will continue to do this in my stay here in Sudan, my strongest appeal for peace. I understand that this is a complicated war with many political difficulties, but my appeal is not a political one.
With nearly 8 million people displaced by the brutal conflict in Sudan, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, has called for urgent and additional support to respond to their needs.
Second, I ask the government for maximum support and cooperation to all humanitarian agencies working in the country. There are still many complicated obstacles, administrative obstacles, security obstacles, and we need those obstacles to be removed to be more efficient in how we do our work.
Well, let's go to the world of sports, because on Thursday was the opening day of the Caribbean Series 2024 that takes place in Miami, where in the closing game, the Tiburones of La Guaira of Venezuela defeated the Tigres of Licey of the Dominican Republic with a final score of 3-1. At Lone Pot Park, home of the Major League Baseball team, the Miami Marlins, the Venezuelan team, dominated with good pitching by Cuban right-handed pitcher Miguel Romero. The first Venezuelan run came from a Luis Torres RBI single to right field to put Venezuela up on the scoreboard. Later, in the top of the sixth, Ramon Flores singled to center field to drive home play to Wilson Ramos for the second Venezuelan run. Later, in the top of the ninth, another Cuban, this time a former MLB star Yasiel Puig, hit a solo home run to left the field to extend the lead to 3-1. It is worth to recall that the Tiburones of La Guaira last appearance in Caribbean Series was in 1986. Previously, in the inaugural game of the 2024 Caribbean Series, the Criollos of Cagua out of Puerto Rico won 5-2 on the Giants of Rivas from Nicaragua. In this way, the Criollos obtained the 200th team victory representing Puerto Rico in the history of the Caribbean Classic. In this context, after Nicaragua dominated the first innings of the game, the Criollos took the lead in the sixth thanks to Jack Lopez's triple. On this way, the future Hall of Fame and former player of MLB, Yadier Molina, celebrated his first victory as manager in the Caribbean tournament. And let's move on now to the middle game of the opening day, where the non-member team of the tournament, the Royal Scorpions of Curaçao, won in their debut against the historic representative of Mexico, the Naranjeros of Hermosillo, with a close score of 6-5. In the second inning, Mexico scored 2 runs thanks to a back-to-back home runs of Aaron Arthur and Julian Ornelas. Then in the sixth, Curaçao answered with another back-to-back homers by Jonathan Scoop and Ademar Rifalea to take the lead 5-2. Finally, in the former Japanese League star Vladimir Valetien hit another home run to give his team the winning run. On Friday, the second day of the 2024 Caribbean Series, brings us again another triple-headed from the south of Florida. In the first game, the champion team of the Panamanian League, the Federales of Chiriquí, faced the Curaçao team that achieved a win in their debut. In the middle game, the Tigers of Licey will also go head-to-head against Nicaragua in a game between loser teams, and at night the Criollos of Cagua will seek for their second win as many games when they play against the Naranjeros de Hermosillo. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net, and join us on social media as well: Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.